Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, here's another update on Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, I should say deceased, and what exactly is going on. I did find a little more tidbit of information here that is about his situation. He was in 1990. His contract with the military was canceled. Now, apparently he has some sort of contract. He's a reserve officer. He went through the ROTC program and didn't go kind of officially. So it's kind of an odd situation that he's involved with in terms of how that works. So I'm not sure what that's all about, and it's very confusing. And I don't really know anything about the military, how it works, etc., particularly now and back then, etc., how much freedom he has, what he was doing, being in intelligence, which PSYOPs, I don't know, I guess PSYOPs is intelligence again. What do we make of what he was doing as well? Apparently he was traveling all around and about, going where he wanted to. I don't know how much freedom he had or not. He did teach at a college for many years, and this was the same period of time that he was supposed to be, and this college was back east, I think in Washington, D.C. or something, while these molestations were going on. So he wasn't even in the same state, and he was 3 or 4 hours away. It doesn't add up, but apparently that didn't suffice for the investigators. And why was that? Well, another tidbit has come out, so we can look at this as well. Now, he's the black sheep. Everybody hates him. And who hated him? Well, a politician hated him. And he states this, and it does make sense. Jesse Helms, one of these hillbilly guys from the South, while they're praising the Lord and they're hanging the black people. The same old story with these kind of hillbillies. So, of course, he wanted this horrible Satanist who's legally able to practice his religion in the military. Now, we may not like that as a general group, but if we turn one religion away, we have to do the other. Now, people have been persecuted all the time for this. It was the Jews initially, the Mormons were treated badly, all of these things. So we can't say you can't be this religion or not. It's legal in the United States to be a Satanist, and he made sure to cover his bottom that he became a chaplain and got this written into their book, which he wrote the book on Satanism for the chaplains. So, I mean, he's very smart that way because he knew this would be an issue, and he didn't want to get caught with it as being an unofficial religion within the U.S. military. So very smart on his part. So Jesse Helms went out and told everybody to go after him. Because what it appears right now is that if it is correct, and we don't really know without doing extensive, expensive, long-term research, that he wasn't even in San Francisco when this was happening. Now, could he jump on a plane and come back? I think that's a scenario that's pretty difficult. He had to be in college every single day, and their attendance taken. So he was jumping back and forth on planes. I find that hard to believe. That's awful stressing to go back and forth. You're losing a lot of your day. Don't buy it. If that is even possible. And there would be some record of him going back and forth, we assume. But as an officer and being in the military, they do whatever they want. And, if records disappear, other things of where they were traveling, etc., is not too surprising. But we don't know. But I do find it hard to believe that would be the scenario. So with pressure from that, military investigators went after him, and they virtually found nothing. People have come up with all sorts of things of what happened, what the investigations were done. Well, I don't know what's true or not, but these cases were very young children. You're talking 2 to 3 years old. I'm not sure they have any credibility whatsoever. Well, I hate to say that. It's true. Children live in a Mickey Mouse world with flying elephants and all sorts of silly things. I don't think they have any grasp on reality at all. And he wasn't accused by many. There was one person that accused him was actually another suspicious person. He was a minister at the base. So here we go. He's getting accused by people that want to get him. His case was unsuccessful. The military threw it out. He wanted $3 million. He went to civil court, which is what most of them do. And he got, I believe, $200,000 or so through that to end the case. Now, you think that means that he was guilty. Well, it doesn't, because it's going to cost a lot more than that to have trials, bring people in. So people settle because it's cheaper. If you have to pay everybody to come in here and do all these things and drag it off over the years, it's better just to pay people off. Now, this is what happens in a lot of celebrity cases as well. Michael Jackson, etc. When people accuse someone of something, they pay them off. It's easier and cheaper than going to court. So we don't, and in those are other cases, we just have no idea what was going on. They're all terrible people, yet there never seems to be a single case. There was one case against Michael Jackson by a very discredited person who was trying to blackmail a whole bunch of other people, and of course that failed. If this guy is so terrible, why isn't there numerous things? Certainly the Santa Barbara Police Department that went after him certainly would if they had other people coming forward. Doesn't make sense. The same thing with Aquino. We just don't see to have any cases here. Now, there has been several people that have come and named him personally. A lot of this just doesn't hold water. As much as I hate to criticize victims that apparently have went through some terrible things, we have no credibility. They're all my MK Ultra mind control people that were fed whatever they wanted. And did they actually see it, or again, is this a guy they all picked out? It seems to me that the worst person you could put in charge of something or have them actively involved is a guy who's been identified. And he was identified not before the TV shows, after. So when he was on Geraldo and Oprah and everything knew about it, all of a sudden he was the poster child that everybody talked about. And there never seems to be anybody else. He did everything on his own. Yeah, well, we have a scenario here that everything wrong on this planet, anything strange that happens, of course, is some sort of terrible conspiracy. What it is, it's corruption. As long as we have corruption and we don't prosecute people who are criminals, we're never going to get anything done. Part of it is the red herring reality. So basically, it's Manson, the Process Church, and Michael Aquino that have done everything. So, I mean, those are the culprits. And I have figured out and why these three were picked as well. And I will be coming out with that relatively soon. There is information on that that has come out, and we really know where all that started from. Manson has been pictured as a horrible, deviant, murdering people left and right. The guy worked at Universal Studios. He wrote music. The Beach Boys recorded them. This is a guy who was a big-time pimp and a drug seller. He was not out there violently hurting people. As a matter of fact, in some ways, he was kind of a good guy. He refused to testify against Tex Watson. He got 2 of the girls off of drugs. So it doesn't add up, but you think it is because you're a brainwashed idiot. Now, the stories I hear about Aquino are just outrageous. Some stooge just came out and said, well, he eats flesh. He's a cannibal now on top of it, so let's hear that. Yet none of this has been proven. People have infiltrated his organization. 2 people have, and have stayed in it for about 6 months. Nothing happened. It was a conservative, boring, ritual magic organization. They threw out troublemakers. You have to. You can't have a bunch of lunatics running around. You can't have an organization like that. So unless you run an organization, you may think that that's what you put together. So it's just absurd. Now, we have no idea what's real. Now, the problem is in this world, and someone who works in the intelligence industry and is working with all the spooks, and he has admitted working with the CIA, DIA, and a whole bunch of people. He claims he didn't work with the NSA. We don't know that either, and we don't know what fairy tales he's telling us as well. I'm assuming he's kind of worked with everybody. So, and they do whatever they want. Kinda. We know that they smuggle drugs, are involved in pedophilia operations. James Rothstein arrested 2 CIA agents who murdered 2 15-year-old boys. I mean, this is over the top. They've been smuggling drugs. They're a bunch of lunatics. A certain group of these people are doing this. So, was he part of that? What's going on? And to blame him for certain operations in Vietnam that were done by the CIA, saying he participated in it, is really hard to know is true. He is a psyops guy. I wonder how much physical out there in the battlefield he was. He claims he was in firefights and everything else, but was he involved in these execution teams? Well, I find that hard to believe. I don't think that really covers what he is and what he's doing. He's really not a trigger man. They have plenty of those special forces type that just love it. So I find it hard to believe they would take this psyops guy and put him in that particular position. Speculative, speculative, speculative. And of course, there's a lot of people that are in the ground now and convicted of crimes they did not commit. It may be as high as 30% in our prisons that people are in there that shouldn't be in there. Not to mention 90% of people in prisons are there for drug charges and they shouldn't be there. Criminals like organized crime and all the street gangs that are murdering people left and right don't get picked up for anything. So if we want to stop all these problems, we need to stop corruption, as I always said. And picking Aquino, and people, there's a few people out there who just say the stupidest things. People accused him of murdering thousands. What is it? How did he murder thousands? I mean, we do have people that murder thousands out there. The government does, and they ruin your life and throw you in prison. And all sorts of operations where people are dying every day, and people who living on the street that are dying that can't get their medications. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's chase this guy down. The time frame for all this stuff and everything else doesn't make sense. I mean, he's been out of the picture now for probably 15 years before his death. He was very sick 5 years or so before that, and he probably wasn't doing too well to begin with. All these things are supposed to happen were happening kind of in the 80s, which is 30 years ago. Now, we do have certain witnesses that we have out there. One is Kathy O'Brien, who wrote the book Trancing of America, claiming that she's a sex slave MK Ultra person and so forth. And there's several other people, including people like David Shurter, who claims that as a child, and I don't know how he could remember that. And of course, people were being conditioned. It's interesting how several people have come out and said they're going to be made the Antichrist by Michael Aquino. How convenient. It's the same old stories. He's going around making the Antichrist by changing them, or you're going to be, what egos this is, and what a cliche on top of it, that you're going to be the Antichrist. What an ego to think that you're that special. And of course, none of these people were, and they all were pretty dumb people that couldn't do anything. So we go on and on with these kind of things that are out there from people making these claims. And as I said, I feel sorry for them. They're obviously gone through a lot of trauma. Now, the problem is this. None of these people are credible witnesses. Quite frankly, they are highly mentally disturbed from trauma. A lot of their stories don't make sense. The plain and fact is simple is Kathy O'Brien, who was molested by Bob Hope, Dean Martin, and every other celebrity you can think of, Chris Christopherson. She was having bestiality sex. She was having intercourse with Ronald Reagan, who barely could move. I find it very hard to believe that he could function sexually. And that goes with a lot of people she was so-called involved with, a lot of bunch of old men, particularly senators and so forth. She was horribly tortured and whipped, yet on the reality of it is that I don't know if she has scars or not. Apparently, after being tortured and whipped and bruised and ripped open, she went out and then did Hustler magazine photoshops. I mean, this doesn't make sense. You can't take the kind of physical abuse that these people are talking about and be able to survive it without being crushed mentally and physically. So these are just outrageous claims that don't make sense. You can't whip somebody who bleeds horribly in a bathroom and then 4 hours later she's at a cocktail party. It doesn't hold water, plain and simple. And the whole idea is we've got to find the people who are doing this, and we have to have proper laws and anti-corruption laws. We have to have protection for people in the industries, particularly law enforcement, that their pensions and careers are protected with whistleblower laws. This is what James Rothstein stated, and it just makes 100% sense. This will change the way things happen. But you have to protect these people, and they have to handle that properly. It's not difficult to do. We pass laws all the time. We have billions of dollars to give to Nazi Ukraine, but we don't have any money for anything else. It's just a joke. So the whole idea is that we have to start putting our money where it matters, and we have to make sure that we are not doing things that are actually going after potentially innocent people while the guilty get away. It's as simple as that. And all you pundits out there that have no credibility whatsoever, who keep going after Aquino with absolutely zero evidence, well, you should be ashamed of yourself. Let's go after the people who have done something, or let's get some proof here. Now he is the person that's been kicked around for 20 years. Well, the bottom line is he's now dead. You wasted so much time going after the wrong people that those really guilty never got prosecuted the way they should have, while you're persecuting Aquino. So it's the same old nonsense here. It's the same old people that want to go after safe dead horses instead of going at the batches of boobs and criminals out there that they refuse to acknowledge. And this goes for entire society that allows this kind of scumbucket type people to prosper, like the free energy people, who are all corrupt scumbuckets as well and refuse to go after their own criminals that are in that market, have been defrauding people for years. So it goes on and on with all these things that people do absolutely nothing about. There's absolutely, while there has been about 6 people who have testified in court against Aquino, claiming that he was the one that tortured them. Again, boy, he's a busy boy. Nobody else does anything. Nobody else is identified. It's so convenient that people see him only. I mean, it just doesn't cut. These are all people that are completely and totally mentally destroyed. Other witnesses are coerced and forced into positions. Children that don't know what they're talking about. They're showed photos. All of this stuff is nonsense. I don't believe it. Identifying his house and everything else. Well, the point is that his house, nothing was found there. And the fact is, I don't believe they identified his house. I don't think young children could do that. I think this is another contrived things done by law enforcement who's trying to get, again, cases. If this was all so great and everything was there, then why didn't the charges go through? They weren't found to be valid whatsoever. And there was a contradictory from the military, who in the end dropped all the cases because they were under political pressure to go after this bad guy, Satanist. If that's going to be the way people witch hunt everybody all the time, well, that's bad for everybody. We need proof of criminal activity, and we need good investigators to go through it. As usual, the military screwed up everything. What happened when I believe Tobacco and Firearms or some feds came in there and looked at the buildings that were burned down, the military said they were just natural fires caused by cigarettes or electricity or whatever their bull was. Other ones came in and they found that this was arson. This is the kind of horrible, horrible things that go on. Neither was the other person at the Presidio who was accused of most of the molestations. It was not Aquino. He was only accused by one person. Of course, there's all sorts of different stories we know nothing about and timelines. And, it's the same old story. Oh, let's add into that group of people Aleister Crowley. He killed thousands, too. All of this is just complete absurdity. And if we keep chasing after these people, and even if they are involved in certain things, they are at the tiny, tiny level compared to what's going on nationally and internationally as people are murdered by the hundreds all over the world that nobody does nothing about. So it's just the same old story here. But the bottom line here is, did I jump over that properly or not? I got distracted there. So the whole idea is that in 1990, his contract was canceled. And as I said, I don't understand the military contracts, as he is not going through the regular military system. He's a reserve officer. He's ROTC. And apparently, so there's something strange about him. He didn't go through a military academy. He went through what appeared to be, he did take extra classes and got his Special Forces badge, apparently. And I don't know if he had to go through that strenuous training because it's very difficult. Most people don't make Special Forces, otherwise known as Green Beret. It's very difficult. But he supposedly got his Special Forces badge, and he was under contract, which they canceled in 1990. Now, what he said there as the conclusion to all this is the fact that that was a full-time contract. Now, I don't know how this works either. I don't know how the military works. I don't know what's going on there. It's all very confusing. And the military is a very strange organization with all sorts of little rules and regulations and how these things work and how officers work. And it depends on where you're an officer. Being in intelligence, being that he was a chaplain, everything else means he probably had free reign to go lots of places. But there is no proof of anybody knowing him or doing anything that has been claimed by other people. It just doesn't exist. So what he claims for his time spent in this new position at the Army Space Command is that was a part-time contract that he had. So his full-time contract was canceled, but he got a part-time contract. Now, was this some sort of slick little deal he was able to manipulate through the military? And, of course, he was taken and placed in a place where nobody would see him and he couldn't get really in much trouble. Cherokee Mountain in Colorado for 4 years. Now, I don't know what part-time means. It doesn't make sense to me. Did he only work 4 hours a day? I don't know. Maybe it was a limited time aspect. It was a new place. Maybe he didn't work all these hours. So we don't know, but that's what he said, and it was Jesse Helms that went after him. So that's the. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if anybody knows about military contracts and so forth, but his main contract was canceled. He slipped under the door with a part-time contract, which sounds very military to me, meaning the fact that, oh, yeah, they threw him out over here, but they brought him in the backside here. After all, he was an officer. There was no actually charges against him, but the military had to do something, particularly at the Presidio. So they basically canceled that contract, and he opened up a new one, which is considered part-time. Now, I don't know if anybody knows anything about that. As I said, contact me. And that goes for anything. If people have different stories or information, we're just reporting here. We just don't know fully about anything. We look at people, we look at the credibility they have, what they report, what their attitudes are. The stories about everybody are just insane. They don't make any sense. And they're done deliberately, as I will release soon, to particularly demonize people for a reason. And it's the red herring, as they did with Manson, to move away from what was really going on in that situation as well. And I'll give you the information there as well. And when you hear it, it makes a lot of sense. And what is going on with Aquino is the fact that we don't have any proof. Now, Aquino's a weirdo, strange. He's a fantasist, and was able to get away with it, oddly enough, in the military in the 1980s, which is kind of shocking. But this was a more liberal time. After the Vietnam War, people did all sorts of things in the military. People smoked dope. They did all sorts of things. You don't do that now. If they smell marijuana on you and they test you, they put you in military prison. I mean, things have changed radically. So I don't know what was going on there. And of course, this was San Francisco, where things tend to be screwy. So we just don't know what was going on in that base, what was happening. And as a high-ranking officer, you probably had a lot of free reign, particularly in San Francisco. So we don't know. There's some talk about his commanding officer. We don't know anything about him as well in terms of what he was doing with Aquino, where he was tracked or following. But, his record, we ought to know where Aquino is, at least on paper, of all these things. We have none of this without going through lots of trouble to potentially find it. Well, here we go again. We have a lot of people who are basically had shattered minds who are accusing Aquino of doing things. Courts back them up, or at least they testified in these situations, without any proof really whatsoever. So two people testified it was Aquino. Other people have said this. As I said, we've got other people that say as a child they were trained and abused by him. Well, I just don't. These are just not credible witnesses. And it's sad to say because of the trauma these people have went under, but they just have no credibility whatsoever, and it doesn't make any sense, and they don't have any good stories. And as I've mentioned, if you're going through horrible physical abuse, you're not going to be able to function. If you have a jaw out of alignment, you're going to be in horrible screaming pain. If you're whipped, you're going to have all sorts of scars on you, and you're not going to be able to perform. None of this makes sense. And it doesn't, going on witch hunts is not going to get the real culprits. But that's what everybody wants to do. And they report a bunch of stuff that is strictly hearsay and fits into their own belief system. And the people that believe this stuff, the people that are on this trail and who are harping after him have zero credibility as well. These people out here are basically reporting complete and total nonsense, and that's it. They're writing books that are complete and total hearsay, and they're downright close to fiction, if not fiction. It goes on and on with the kind of ridiculousness that goes on, and nobody gets truth. But they don't want truth. They want to fill their pockets, they want their ego boosted, and they want to be special. And how do you do that? You try and put credibility to a non-credible story, and of course you blame the same culprits. And there's a whole bunch of people like this out there. And once he went public, Aquino, he signed his own attack when he should have went underground instead of overground, being so public. That was a big mistake. So I hope this gives people a little more clarity. As these cases change, I will keep updating them. You find little bits and pieces. That explains those missing 4 years, that this was a part-time contract when his full-time contract was canceled. Until next time.